Chapter 40, Let Me Fly. In the spring of 1996, Rough Riders put ourselves officially on the map by signing Jadakiss, Chic, and Styles, now called The Lox, to a record contract with Puff Daddy's Bad Boy Entertainment. Grease was to produce their first single, If You Think I'm Jiggy, and Puff wanted the album fast tracked for a summer release so that his new group could share in the celebrity spotlight enjoyed at the time by his other artists, the notorious B.I.G., Mace, Faith Evans, and 112. I didn't need any more hints that my dream wasn't meant to be. This shit ain't gonna happen, Gotti, I said to him one night sitting outside of the studio. I can feel it. This shit ain't gonna happen. It was late, the streets were cold and quiet, and the reality of my 12-year journey was hitting me in the face. Either let me fly or give me death. X, don't worry about it. These label dudes are assholes. They don't know what's up. We just gotta keep banging these niggas. Did you know this rapping shit was all I ever wanted, dog? This is what I was blessed with. This is the only thing that I'm fucking good at. There was a long pause. Yo, I think they're gonna make me an A&R over at Def Jam. So as soon as I get in there, I'm gonna... I don't want to hear that shit. I don't give a fuck anymore, Gotti. I've been doing this shit for 12 years. Dog, you know you're the nicest nigga out here. It's gonna happen. Gotti meant well. Everybody meant well. I just couldn't keep doing it. It was getting too hard to hold on to the strength and the patience and the faith that I needed to go on. Nothing with me ever matters, dog. Nothing. I thought of Tashira. I thought of Xavier and Boomer. I thought of all those nights I spent alone on those rooftops staring at the sky. Either let me fly or give me death. Let my soul rest, take my breath. If I don't fly, I'm gonna die anyway. I'ma live on, but I'll be gone any day. Chapter 41, Payback on Ravine. I already thought that Ravine was the devil block. It was my darkest place, the place where I committed most of my sins, and I never imagined that it would ever get worse for me there. But it did. I was sitting in front of one of the buildings a few feet away from a bunch of young niggas who started panicking when they saw a police car come down the block flashing its lights. It wasn't a rare sight to see the police roll up on a block looking for somebody. Every few days around the way, brothers were getting arrested for something they did or fit the description of doing. But these kids ran into the building like they had a murder warrant out for them, obviously not understanding how much guiltier their scrambling made them look. Why y'all running like that? I yelled after them. For some reason, the police didn't seem to give a fuck that day, and after they finished their drive-by and did nothing, I walked into the building too. That's when I saw the chain. It was a nice gold herringbone. Yes, just what I need. I was broke, and a nice little chain could get me a few dollars, so I scooped it off the floor and put it in my sock. A few minutes later, the young bucks, who now that the police were gone had their brave hood faces on again, walked over to me. Yo, I lost my chain. Now, lost property is always fair game, so I didn't have anything to say. Neither did my man Purcell, who has since walked over to chill with me. Are you sure one of y'all niggas ain't got it? The young boy was getting heated at me. He probably knew my rep for being a robbery nigga, but I simply ignored him and told Purcell to give me a ride home. But instead of going to Mulford, I asked him to drop me off at Slow Bomb, where I got out and sold the chain for $40. As I left the building, folks on the block had a warning for me. Yo, X, niggas is looking for you. They say you robbed some kid for his chain and his leather coat. What? I didn't rob nobody for no coat. They said you stuck up a 16-year-old for his herringbone and his Averex. An Averex? That was one of the nicest leather jackets a person could have in the hood. It would have been nice to take that off somebody, but I hadn't seen an AV on a potential victim in a while, and I did not rob kids. They said they're coming back around to look for you, dog. I don't care. I didn't do nothing, man. Watch. I'm just going to sit and wait for them right here. The boy whose chain it was must have had a lot of family because a little while later, his father and three of his older cousins came back to Slow Bomb looking for me. I told them that I hadn't done any robberies. I found that chain, man. I didn't rob nobody. I can even take you to where I got it from. Pops didn't seem to care. My son said you robbed him. Well, it wasn't me. The only reason I followed him back to where his son was waiting was because I knew I wasn't guilty of anything. I didn't steal anybody's chain. This time, though, the truth didn't matter. Yeah, Dad, that's him. Just like Shay had done so many years before. The kid looked me right in my face. He's wearing the same jacket. I had found the coat that I was wearing earlier that day in someone's front yard. Either this was a fucked up coincidence or the kid was totally lying. But there was no time to explain. Before I knew it, two guys grabbed me from behind and the father punched me dead in my chest. I tried to release my arms, but I had no chance. He kept punching and punching me. And soon, all I could feel were his fists smashing against my nose and my eyes and my open jaw. Boom, boom, boom. I felt the blows against my face, and when I fell to the ground, that's when everyone started kicking me. Over and over, heavy Timberland boots crashed against my body. I curled up to protect my ribs, but it was no use. I didn't do it. The kick the kicks kept coming harder and harder, slamming against my spine and the back of my legs. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. One guy wouldn't stop kicking me in the head. Then I heard someone say they should take me into the park, and three guys started dragging me up the street by my shoulders. My body was too beaten to resist, and as they pulled me up the street, the mob grew. Niggas who didn't even know what had happened with the chain came over to help administer the beatdown, and then I realized what was going on. For all the times I had robbed someone and ran up on them with the dog, for all the times I had left someone in an alley, broke and embarrassed with their pants down and their girl watching, this was their payback. This was their chance for vengeance. They brought me to the park, and there, out of the corner of my eye, I saw one of my attackers pick up a brick. No, Lord, no. I'm not going to let them kill me. Somehow, I summoned all of the strength I had left and made it to my feet. I heard sirens, and I stumbled away as fast as I could. I don't know why that guy never caught me with that brick. A few minutes later, an ambulance found me a few blocks away, laid out on the street in a pool of blood. But whoever called the paramedics must have also told them what had happened because they weren't just there to help. They were also there to comment. So, you want to rob kids, huh? Well, this is what you get, the bastard said to me with a greasy attitude. My head and face were numb. My ribs felt like they were crushed against my lungs. I was having an asthma attack and I couldn't get enough air. I thought I was going to die. I can't breathe, I told them. You'll be fine. Shut up and get in the ambulance. Once they took me away, someone ran to Tashira's apartment and told her that I had been beaten up. At first, Boo Boo hesitated about coming to the hospital because she had feared that I was beaten up too badly and didn't want to see me like that. But when she arrived at Yonkers General, she felt better because the doctors in the emergency room told her that I was going to be okay. They had taken a bunch of x-rays and said that I hadn't broke anything. Tashira called Uncle Ray and asked him to come to the hospital. Ever since Valhalla, him and Boo Boo had become close friends. And just 6 hours after I got to the emergency room, the doctors told my uncle that they were sending me home. He's all right, they said. Later, Tashira told me how deformed my face looked that night, how swollen and inflamed it was. The hospital had barely cleaned all of the wounds on my body when they discharged me, and I wasn't wearing any clothes because they had been torn off during the beating. But Boo Boo took care of me. She washed me up, applied some extra bandages, and made a fresh bed for me in the living room. Then she watched me go to sleep. 3 days later, I felt like I was getting worse. It was getting harder and harder to breathe, and every time I woke up, there would be blood all over my pillow. You need to go back to the hospital, Tashira said to me. At first, I didn't listen to her until I looked at myself in the mirror and saw that the whole right side of my neck had swollen out past my face. One side of my jaw appeared to be hanging lower than the other side, and the front of my chin was loose. I couldn't stop drooling blood. Ray still worked at Valhalla, so he said that he could take me to the hospital at the prison. We thought anything would be better than Yonkers General, and we were right. The doctors in Valhalla told me that my neck was swollen because I had a huge abscess in my throat that was filled with pus. They told me that if I had stayed home for one more day without treatment, all of the infected liquid in my face would have begun to choke me to death. They also said that my nose and my upper and lower jaw were badly broken. They were going to bring me into surgery right away to reset my jaws and remove all of the pus, and then they were going to have to wire my mouth closed. How could Yonkers General have sent me home like that? Was this because I didn't have an ID on me? Because I didn't have any money or insurance? How could they just tell me I was all right? That was crazy. If I had been able to breathe properly, I would have gone back to that hospital and killed every single one of those doctors. After the surgery, Valhalla kept me for 3 days under observation. Tashira and Ray came to see me and sat with me for most of the time. I never saw anyone else in my family, although one day Ray told me that they had actually seen my mother on their way up to the hospital. They were leaving the supermarket downtown in Getty Square and saw her leaning out of her apartment window. I hadn't seen or spoken to her since she had moved out of School Street a few years before. Hey sis, what's up? Ray had called out to her. How are you doing, baby? Arnett still spoke to her youngest brother at least once a week. We're going to see Earl. He's in the hospital. My mother paused for a second. Oh, yeah, I heard he got jumped. That was all she said. Ray looked up at her, waiting for more of a response, but nothing came. He didn't feel comfortable asking a mother if she wanted to come visit her own son. So I guess I'll talk to you later then. Okay, baby. My mother left the window. My jaw was wired closed for 3 months. I couldn't eat any solid food. I couldn't chew. I couldn't drink anything that I wasn't able to sip through a straw. And then it couldn't be too hot or too cold, or it would inflame the nerve endings in my mouth. I couldn't talk. Instead, I was forced to make the sounds of words through my clenched teeth and hope that people could understand me. It was a living nightmare. Tashira looked after me every day, making all different kinds of soups and shakes. Ray gave me a blender, and every week I came up with a different concoction. A mix of hard boiled eggs was nasty, but farina was always good. And when I blended up the mashed potatoes from Kentucky Fried Chicken with the gravy that came with it, I figured out that the proportions were just right to make a perfect liquid. I still didn't get any visitors. I didn't see Collie, Buzzy, or any of my other aunts and uncles. Didn't see my sisters, and definitely not my mother. I didn't see Wah or Darren. A friend of mine, Donardo, would ride his bike over every few days from School Street to come say what's up. And Butler, a friend of Darren's who I was locked up with in Valhalla and had started rolling with Rough Riders, came by every now and then to bring me some soup from the store. And of course, Ray. But that was it. So laying in the bed made me realize who cared about me and who didn't. Everybody on the music tip was running with the locks, and it was obvious that most of my family had written me off. I knew that they heard what happened and how bad it was. The story of DMX getting beat up was all over Yonkers by that next afternoon. But that didn't seem to motivate any of them to knock on the door or even pick up the phone. Fuck it, I said to myself. At least I had Boo Boo. I had been robbing niggas my whole life, and I never had this kind of dirt thrown back at me until now. Until the one time that I didn't rob the nigga. That was crazy. I couldn't help to wonder if my beatdown was some kind of spiritual payback. Had I earned it? Had the 15 years that I spent robbing and stealing with no mask and no gun finally came back to haunt me? The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The more I began to believe that the beatdown had been my day of judgment. I was hurt. I was fucked up. I almost died, but God was doing nothing but teaching me a lesson. You want to piss in the bed, Earl? Huh? Then sleep in it. It was like when the kid said later that the person who robbed him was wearing a ski mask. Everyone in the street knew that meant I couldn't have done it because they all knew that whenever I did my dirt, I rolled with my bare face. That's why they hated me so much, because I was always bold enough to not give a fuck about who saw me. But no one cared that I was wrongly accused. You do dirt, you get dirt. And if my robbing and stealing was all they knew about me, why should they care? Everybody knew Earl, but there was another Earl. So lying on that bed with my face still swollen and all these fucking metal wires cutting my mouth up, I convinced myself that if this was a lesson, then I didn't deserve to feel sorry for myself either. Did you think life was that fucking sweet? I let you slide for a minute because I love you. But when it was time, you knew I had to smack the shit out of you. I was alive. I should have been dead, but I was still breathing. And that was the fact that I couldn't let myself forget. I was still breathing, and there must be a reason for that. There must be a reason that he kept me alive. As the days wore on, I also became more and more glad that I was smacked that hard, literally, instead of figuratively. I already knew how to deal with a physical lesson. It didn't matter how vicious or violent the lesson was. I had experience with physical shit. I had beatings my whole life. What's that? Steak and eggs? Oh yeah, I know what that tastes like. But since I always thought so much, since my mind and my thoughts were the most sensitive parts of myself, I knew that an emotional lesson of that size would have probably fucked my head up for real. I can't front. Before I came to terms with it, I did want them niggas dead. Driven by the same feelings of anger and payback that they used against me, I wanted to kill all of my attackers one by one and wouldn't have felt any remorse for it. It would have been easy enough because I knew that they all lived around the way. But the more I kept thinking about who I was and a lesson that I needed to learn, those vengeful feelings began to fade. The dirt that I had done in the streets had now been returned, and this would give me the opportunity I needed to move on. A few weeks later, Darren found out how much the kid's chain and jacket cost and gave him the money for what he had lost. And when I saw some of the guys outside on the block a few weeks later, I didn't say nothing to them. After what I just saw, I'm riding with the Lord because I really can't afford to lose my head by the sword. And now that I've seen what I need to see, please take me where I need to be. Chapter 42. One more road to cross. It's hard to talk when your upper and lower jaws are wired together by metal braces that are glued onto your teeth. You have to move your lips as much as possible to make up for the fact that your tongue has nowhere to go. You drool a lot and have to breathe through your nose. It's difficult to fully pronounce words that have more than 2 or 3 syllables, and you can't talk very loud. But if it was hard to talk, it was almost impossible to rap. Although after about 2 weeks being in the bed, that's exactly what I did. I stalked around the house rapping as passionately with my jaws wired closed as when my mouth was wide open. I just pressed my upper and lower jaws together and forced the lines through my clenched teeth, spitting out each word like it had a rotten taste. Like I was like a pit trying to break out of a muzzle. The restriction in my mouth made me more intense, angrier. I was at war with my own body, and while the pain in my jaw was immense, the agony served me well. Now, my first priority wasn't getting put on or getting a deal, it was an injury I had to overcome. And I was going to prove to everybody that no matter what the circumstances, I was the best that ever did it. Nothing would hold me back. I was a dog possessed. The effect was pretty scary. When Tashira saw me wailing in the living room, she would wonder aloud if I was doing my face more damage by talking and rapping and yelling so much. But I didn't care. I was still thin and shaky from not being able to eat solid foods, but I wasn't going to let anything in the way of me saying what I wanted to say. Rapping was what I did. It was my gift, and no matter if I had a deal or not, no matter if my jaws were wired together or not, I was going to make sure niggas heard me. A few weeks before the beatdown, I had spit a few rhymes for a mixtape DJ named Ron G. Along with Kid Capri, who had blown up as a DJ since his days at the Castle, Ron G had built a career around selling tapes of hip hop freestyles. Every few weeks, Ron would invite the best MCs, signed or unsigned, to his studio to lay a few verses that he would put together and sell on the street for $5 or $7. It was a good business. Folks would often prefer to buy a mixtape on the street that was filled with a bunch of different rappers than buy a whole album of one artist in a store for twice the price. You just had to recognize the names of the MCs that were on the mixtape or trust the guy that was making it. Ron was already famous for his blends, where he would lay R&B vocals by Luther Vandross or Michael Jackson over contemporary hip hop beats. So whenever one of his tapes hit the streets, most of New York would be rocking to his latest jams. When Darren told me that he had contacted Ron G through his man Black Fred and had set it up for me to go to Ron's apartment on Riverside Drive in Manhattan to lay a rhyme, I was amped. Mixtapes demanded a certain kind of rapper because real hip hop heads bought them and listened to the lyrics. Every MC knew that they had to represent because if you said a bullshit rhyme, you could bet that you wouldn't be able to sell any of your own stuff in the hood. So for a new MC, mixtapes were an intense trial by fire. And since I knew that Ron hadn't ever heard me rhyme before, when I walked in and he asked me to kick something, I knew I had to kill it. Niggas say I'm bugging and ask me what's the shit I'm on. Cause I did them wrong. Carry him greasy and get him gone. Ron started nodding his head. When I'm on, it's some real fuck the world shit. Okay, that's enough, Ron interrupted me, open off my delivery. You're dope. Just spit that again and I'll press record. The hook was hot. Everybody knows you can talk all day, but when it's on, what you gonna do? Walk away? And What You Gonna Do became the opening song of Ron G's mixtape number 23. Yo, who the fuck is DMX? The streets started talking. Everyone loved the song, but few people knew who I was. Typically, Ron G sold 2 or 3 thousand copies of every tape he dropped. Add to that the small deals he had with distributors to move the tapes out of state, and the African vendors that would dupe another few thousand of their own. And it wasn't uncommon for a Ron G tape to be in the hands of 10,000 people. So it was safe to say that What You Gonna Do gave me my first real buzz in and around New York City since the Born Loser single 4 years ago, 4 years before. While my mouth was still wired shut, Gotti came to Mulford and told me that Ron G's mixtape had helped him finally get the attention of Leor Cohen, the president of Def Jam Records. On the strength of Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt album, Gotti got his A&R gig at Def Jam. From the minute he got there, he had been pressuring his bosses to sign me. But for months, the execs had been ignoring him, telling him to focus his attention instead on the new acts they already had in house, like Trigger and this Brooklyn chick called Foxy Brown. Gotti answered back that Def Jam was being grossly outsold by Death Row and Bad Boy because the identity of the label was lame. I was the perfect person to change it up for them. Once his peoples heard the Ron G tape, they finally listened. So, dog, tell me when you're going to get your wires off, and I'll set a date for all the check writers to come to Powerhouse, Gotti said to me one night while I was watching an episode of The Simpsons. It doesn't matter, man. They could come whenever they want, I said to him through my clenched teeth, still focused on the TV. Yeah, but X, we want them to see you at your best. This will probably be the only time they'll come up here. I'm going to bring Leor Cohen with me, who's the president, and the brother they got up there, Kevin Lyles. Irv, I don't give a fuck, I said, finally looking up at him. They they can come whenever the hell they want. I'm gonna do what I do. X, your jaw is wired shut. It doesn't matter, dog. Don't you understand? That shit doesn't matter to me. Bring them up here. Gotti looked at me for a moment without speaking. Then he gave in. Okay, fuck it. Then I'll let them know it's on tomorrow. Whatever, man. It's on tomorrow then. That night, Powerhouse was packed. Not only were all the pups there, Jadakiss, Chic, Styles, and this other Yonkers MC called Jinx, but Big Stan was there with Grease, PK was working the mixing board, and Watt and Darren were downstairs handling the night's business. Add that to the usual dozen or so wannabe MCs from the neighborhood for whom the studio was a regular hangout, and there were about 30 niggas inside, and everybody was battling. With that many hungry MCs, it doesn't take long for a battle to get disrespectful. But when everyone's together in one tight little studio room, then things can get ugly. When I arrived, Darren told me that folks had been going at each other's throat for almost an hour already. Got he here yet? I asked him. Yeah, he's in there with his people. 6 feet 4 inches tall, broad shouldered, with a conspicuous accent. Leah Cohen was easily the most recognizable executive in hip hop. That is, of course, if you knew who he was. I had seen him once, but no one else besides Watt and Darren knew that the guy standing in the back was the president of the biggest hip hop label in the world. Yo, who's the big tall white dude? I don't know. That kept everyone honest. I wore the clothes I had on that day, sneakers, jeans, and a black hooded sweatshirt. I wasn't shaven, my head wasn't cut, my mouth hurt, but I knew it was my time. Either let me fly or give me death. I walked into the studio room alone. As soon as he saw me, the kid who was rhyming at the time turned his head and looked my way. The beat was blasting, but then it stopped and brothers got quiet. I moved into the center of the room, and the crowd of MCs that had filled almost every inch of that studio moved to the side. They parted like the Red Sea. They knew what was about to go down. Yo, throw that beat back on. First, I had to shut everyone else down. What? Do y'all niggas want war? How do brains taste when they're mixed with gunpowder? Send me the fully automatic because it makes the gun louder. Then I let them know who I was and gave them all that I had. You tell me that there's love here, but to me, it's blatant. What's with all the blood here? I'm dealing with Satan. Plus, with all the hating, it's hard to keep peace. Thou shalt not steal, but I will to eat. Not focusing on anyone or anything, I just said what I had to say. I tried doing good, but good's not too good for me. Misunderstood. Why you choose the hood for me? Me? I'm all right. I just had to work hard at it. Went to grandma for the answer, and she told me that God had it. I called it the convo. It was a new rhyme, a dialogue I had composed between myself and the Lord. I played both parts and meant every word. But when the funds are low, the guns will blow. Looking for that one, that O, make 'em run that dough. No, put down the guns and write a new rhyme. You'll get it all in due time. You'll do fine. Just have faith, 'cause you mine. And when you shine, it's going to be a sight to behold. So don't fight to be old or lose sight when it's cold. See that light down the road? It's going to guide you there. Two sets of footsteps. I was right beside you there. I started sweating. I could feel the wires in my mouth pulling, straining to keep my jaws together. But no matter what I had been through, no matter what I had done, I had to prove that I could still rhyme better than anyone in the world. So I hit him with "Let Me Fly." There was no better song. I'm a flow regardless because I'm an artist until I'm trapped. I continue to hit the hardest, whether I scrap or rap. You give me dap, but you ain't my friend. I see it in your eyes. You contemplate my end. Leor kept nodding, tapping his hands against his knee. Kevin Lyles kept looking at Wah and Darren and Gotti in disbelief. All the pups were paying attention. I knew that I had made my point. I felt it in the air. Then I kept going. You're waiting for that? Bend in the road where you were told that you would go when you were old? And if you died young, it was cold. Sold. Not for nearly what it was worth. Think back 26 years, be like, what if his birth was a miscarriage and I never existed? Have I gotten something that if taken away, you would have missed it? Didn't know, but I persisted. It was the call of the wild. I merely say what's in my heart, and you call it a style. Don't put it in a cage. Don't mistreat it. You say you hunger for knowledge. Here it is. Eat it. Another song completed is another thought capture. Let me do my thing. I got it locked with this rap shit. That's it. He's the man. Leo jumped up. DMX is the man. What? What? Who won it? What? I looked around growling. I felt like I could rhyme forever. But they had heard all they needed to hear. The night was over. My new life had just begun. It's a few hours after midnight, and now we're racing furiously down a long stretch of desert highway toward home. In the middle of another of the artist's frantic and unpredictable dashes into the unknown. His entourage appreciated his need for space and let him leave the studio without a hassle, likely accepting the fact that their boss has far more reckless navigational skills than they do, and if they tried to give chase, they'd probably get lost anyway, or even end up dead. I get beatings from so many angles, X tells me, banging his fist against the steering wheel at 90 miles per hour, an open bottle of Heineken sitting next to him in the cup holder. Just put me in the woods with three of my dogs, some bullets, and a gun, and leave me to fuck alone for a couple of months. That would help me retrieve what's left of my sanity. There are so many different extremities in my heart, so much turmoil, animosity, anger. But that is not my heart. My heart is gold. My heart is pure. But because of the fleshly things that I go through, my heart and my spirit can get compromised. Nothing will ever kill my spirit, but things sure can fuck it up good. With his foot heavy on the accelerator, X pushes the car to 100 miles per hour. It's like the best person you are, the more you come in conflict with yourself, the more life's realities eat away at your own soul. 110 miles per hour. Do you know what happened when this spiritual advisor lady I started meeting with first saw me? It was 1998. I was doing a show for my first album, and when I came off stage, she told me that she saw a dead man walking 120 miles per hour. And the crazy thing was, dog, that she was right. X flies past a police car parked on the side of the highway. He doesn't slow down. I know that I've done a lot of dirt in my life. You do dirt, you get dirt. But the truth about a thug is that a real thug has a golden heart. A real thug will shoot somebody right in their face, but then turn around and give a couple of dollars to a kid on the street who's hungry. He understands that if you're in the game, you're susceptible to the rules of the game. But that child is not part of that game. See, there's a difference between doing wrong and being wrong. And if your heart is good, it will steer your bad in a certain way. Trying hard not to think about the cops that must be behind us, I attempted to unravel the complexities of his argument. But isn't it easier to be ugly? To just say fuck the world? I asked him, trying not to notice that we're now going 10 miles an hour faster than we were before. Yeah, but even though a real nigga may get a lifetime of suffering, I believe that he's rewarded in the end. Like one time in the club, this drunk nigga spilled his drink on my sleeve. It was my first time wearing that silver and black Rough Riders jersey, so I was chilling. But it was some fruity drink, so my shit got all colored and sticky. And when I turned around, the dude was looking at me with the screw face like he wanted to start something. A Benz truly becomes a Benz at 70 miles an hour over the speed limit. Come on, I thought. Don't do me like that. You could be dead in 4 seconds, you fucking bitch. You know who you spilled your drink on? But do I tell myself he could lose his life right now in this club? Or say, Lord, forgive him, for he knows not what he does? See, even though I was just disrespected, it was up to me to look after his life because he didn't know what he was doing. You can't whip a baby's ass for throwing up. Until they understand what you're saying, you can't fault them. He was drunk, and I prayed for him because I know that the next man may not be as gracious as me. Will the streets ever respect that kind of move? First of all, it's not easy to keep it real like that. Second, I don't care what motherfuckers think because I don't have to be real with anybody else but him. All that fake shit doesn't matter to me because when I wake up, I crack that Bible and say what I have to say to get on with my day. And then before I go to bed, no matter how drunk I am, I crack that Bible again and pray. I pray for forgiveness every night, dog. Cruising at 125 miles per hour with no police in sight, DMX reaches for the CD player. The artist rarely listens to music that is currently on the radio. Instead, the stereos in his car fill with old school R&B compilations and his own CDs. Occasionally, a Scarface or a Nas album will slip its way into the rotation, but only for a few select songs. So the music that DMX rides to is normally a soundtrack to years past. Tonight's mood calls for Atlantic Star's Silver Shadow. I remember gazing on those quiet nights. The stars were as bright as they could be, wondering if things would ever go right and if there was a spot up there for me. The song eases his mind. I don't know why I liked this song in 1985, but something drew me to it. Now I listen to the words and realize that the words applied to me then. I just didn't know it. Then one star got brighter by the minute. Strange that it seemed to have my name written in it. In 1985, I didn't have any reason to thank my lucky stars, he says, relaxing back into his seat. But that's when I was given the shadow. And I think that I've been growing ever since. My life didn't get better and better since 85, but my talent developed. And that's the one part of me that no one can ever take away. Suddenly, DMX hangs a left and safely pulls into his driveway.